Around July of 2025, I made a video called The Great Mind Rebellion, Uranus in Gemini, and I called it The Age of Inspired Autonomy. This was when Uranus first entered Gemini on the 7th of July, but it returned in retrograde back in to Taurus in November 2025. Now it's ingress Gemini, and it's its last pass. That was its last pass of Taurus. What I was really sitting with them was the first break in our mental field, individual and collective. Uranus entering Gemini felt like a disturbance in our narratives and in the collective narrative itself. So it felt like something beginning to loosen in the realm of thought, language, narrative, communication, and also in technology. I was thinking about the way our minds are shaped long before we can ever call those thoughts our own. So when we're children, our family patterning, the social conditioning, inherited belief, and the ideological atmosphere we grow up in, and definitely the media saturation and these days heaps of propaganda. So all of that can live in us so deeply that it starts feeling like our identity. So the heart of that earlier astrology video was the possibility that Uranus in Gemini might open a long process of mental liberation by reclaiming our inner authority and a more conscious relationship to what we think and why we think it. And as I sat with going over that video, because I've kind of forgotten what I said, I thought of Socrates. And at his trial before his death sentence, he said, an unexamined life is not worth living. And he was pointing to the necessity of introspection for self-reflection and definitely for critical thought. He was a philosopher. So he understood that a life lived without examination, without questioning what we believe and what shapes us and what we're serving, risks becoming automatic, inherited, and definitely not fully our own. And to me, the sky again seems to be calling for exactly that kind of examination. So I'm not talking about more information or stronger opinions, but a deeper inquiry into the life of the mind itself. Hello, welcome back. I'm Karen Sullivan, and this is Soul Symbols. And today, as you probably assume from the introduction, we're going to be looking at Uranus's ingress to Gemini, which happens this week. I will be looking at the full moon in Scorpio, which is happening this Friday, and I will do that in my Friday contemplations that I am now doing. It's a deeper dive and more reflective look at the astrology and how it affects us. So I want to return back to what I was saying, because not only saying a minute ago, but what I said in that first video, because the field that we're in now feels different to me. I think that first video, that was a foreshadowing of what is happening now. Okay, so it was a sort of threshold for us. But this one is belonging to the return. Uranus is not going to go back now. We've got it here for 7 years in Gemini. So look at that period between July and November and have a look at that. I'm going to pop a chart up for a sec so you can have a look at what I'm talking about. Okay, so this is the chart for July time when Uranus first ingressed Gemini. And here we have Uranus here. And as I said, the atmosphere around it is fuller now. Okay, so that's the chart there. We got the Pluto there, Saturn in Aquarius with Neptune there. Okay, but let me get the next chart up. What we have now, we still have Uranus in Gemini. It's not exactly sextile Pluto here, but Pluto obviously is still in Aquarius, and Saturn is there with Neptune further apart than they were in July. And then let me move this forward. We are building to a pattern. Here's Jupiter entering Leo. and they're all making this pattern. We're building up to this big outer planet aspect in the sky, and Jupiter being there in Leo. So there's something about this combination. Let's put you back to where we are now. Something about the combination that is feeling really audible right now. So the air, as you can see, is alive, and the fire is rising through it. We're in an age of air, but we got the fires being stoked under, and fire and air can be a difficult combination. It can cause wildfires. Okay, so the question is not about what happens when the old script begins to crack that I was talking about back then, but what happens when that crack opens into a louder collective space, and when whatever we've had stirred in our mind is beginning to seek expression. I'm thinking particularly here of this Jupiter in Leo. Okay, let me get you back. Here we are. So what matters at the moment is, Gemini is never just about ideas in the abstract. It's about movement, exchange, and definitely about mediation. So we got Gemini as the street, the signal, the message, the conversation. We can talk of short journeys, thinking of Mercury, that quick, and the marketplace. So it's the threshold between one thing and another. Gemini is a mutable sign, and so it's not going to be standing still for long. It's that planet, it's that sign between the bridge between spring and summer. So it's translating and adapting. It reflects and doubles here. So it's got the ability, Gemini, to connect what was separate, but it's also can split the things that feel whole. So it's got that two-sided ability. And the twins carry that ambiguity. There's always those two faces here. So two faces, two stories, two currents. When there's an accident, a car accident, talking of short travel, you get three people and there's three different narratives of what actually happens. So we've got that kind of energetic here with Gemini. When Uranus moves through Gemini, it's not going to just wake up our thoughts a bit more or give us a few more ideas. It's going to electrify the whole realm. And that's the realm where our thought travels and it takes form. So it can bring absolute brilliance and sudden understanding. It can even bring new languages. I saw another astrologer talking about the younger generation's language that they're bringing. And it can bring us real liberation from stale or inherited ways of thinking and seeing about life in general. But there can also be that agitation, that sense of everything speeding up and scattering our attention all over the place. And it can multiply narratives faster than our psyches can digest them. And we get that a lot with our information technology. And I want to come back to Mercury here in relation to this transit. Mercury rules Gemini, so very important here. But he's the mythic shape that gives Gemini so much of its depth. There is depth here. Yeah, it's about the poor archetype, the youth archetype, but there's also depth here. Mercury is not only the intellect in our modern sense making. Mercury is a messenger between worlds. So he goes up to Mount Olympus, the gods there, down to Hades, and then back again. And he's the one who deals in language, trade, meaning, transaction. He's the one who can carry divine messages and also slips sideways into trickery. Mercury represents the magician in the tarot, and we know magicians bring trickery and illusion. Okay, so there is that energetic there. He's also into bargaining and misdirection and games of skill. Okay, lively is Mercury, but Mercury can bring us to crossroads and thresholds. He's a psychopomp. So he belongs in that sense to translation. But he also belongs to the unstable but fertile territory between what is visible and invisible. To me, that's one of the reasons Uranus and Gemini can open both extraordinary insight and extraordinary confusion. So we can have this sharpening of perception, and there may be a symbolic intelligence brought to life here. So, you know, that awakening of our intuitive or psychic sensitivity. So it can make people more attentive to signs, patterns, dreams, synchronicities, and forms of communication that just don't fit snugly, neatly into that narrow, rational frame. It can also make the field, the general field, more vulnerable to fascination, projection, and seduction by novelty. So the work is not to close down the mysterious, it's to be more discerning about how we meet that. And this is going to matter even more because Pluto is in Aquarius. So Pluto in Aquarius is bringing the underworld into the collective field here. It's working through our systems, networks, group mind, you know, that hive mind, technology, ideology, and the ways people are shaped by the larger structures of influence here. So when Uranus in Gemini moves in supportive relationship with Pluto, and it's in a trine, it's in an air trine with it, I can see why there can be, you know, eruptions from below. Pluto's good at that. So personal and collective material can bubble up. What's been buried can surface. We're seeing this in the world at the moment. Lots of hiddenness is coming to the surface. Expect more of it over the next 7 years. There can be old narratives that rise back up, and unconscious patterning that shows itself more clearly to us. We can get that insight into it. And that'll also be around hidden fears that want to have their own language. They want to change, you know, our fears might want to be translated in a different way, a more positive way. We can have buried desires that rise to the surface here, and they're seeking form. It can be good or otherwise, okay, but the deeper mind pushes upwards, okay. That's the picture of it. It's that symbolic language, that language within, that is going to be pushing up with Pluto and Uranus here. So in both that July 25 threshold and this July 26 atmosphere, because we're building to that beautiful aspect in the sky, which will include Jupiter, Uranus in Gemini is moving in that trine to Pluto in Aquarius. And this is one reason the whole story is going to have so much force in the collective field. And because Gemini is involved in all this, a great deal of all that will probably come through words and stories and interpretation, or through argument and conflict. So it can also be how, you know, the names we give to things and people, the labeling even. So through the language we reach for when something's trying to come into awareness. So inner authority in this sense starts to mean something much more serious than just simple independence, okay, being able to speak our truth. We need to know what our truth is. So it's not just a matter of saying, I think for myself. It's going to be asking us whether we'll look honestly at the voices already living in us, the voices that arrive probably during our childhood and our early life, through family, class, politics, religion, fear, trauma, through our wishes to belong to something, and even that wish that we could be right all the time, and through that wish to remain safe inside a familiar story. And Uranus doesn't play safe. It's sudden and unexpected disruption. So all these areas can be completely disrupted for us, and that doesn't always feel safe, okay? But Uranus in Gemini can be a big liberation for us, okay? Once the old script starts and the narratives start loosening, what arrives in the space it leaves behind, it's not automatically wiser. And this is where the real demand of this transit may lie for us on a personal level. So in that world of speed and stimulation, overstimulation, our task might be to develop a mind that's open without becoming completely and utterly unmoored. We might see some unmooredness going on in the world around us. So a mind that can welcome intuition and symbol without, losing contact with honesty and clear thought. And on the other side, a mind that can move in the living stream of language and culture without being swept away by every current and trend that passes through. That's going to be quite a task over the next 7 years. And I think it is going to accelerate all this information, the AI, the technology. And that is exactly why the technology question is really important in this transit. Because, Uranus in Gemini correlates with acceleration in communication systems, information network, artificial intelligence, and the ways thought is mediated. It's part of our landscape now. But what interests me more is the human question underneath it. So what happens to our imaginations when so much can be generated for us? And we can say the same thing for memory, when so much can be retrieved instantly. And at my age, in my 60s, there is research that says if your mind is busy, you have a lower chance of getting dementia. And this is a concern. And the other area are the questions about creativity, when we've got this speed that's really valued rather than the depth, the long process of creating, the depth process, but their speed, things are being delivered ready-made on the plate. So these are real deeper human questions to all this going on. And also, what is going to happen to a symbolic life that brings so much meaning to us when attention becomes fragmented? So there may be tremendous innovation in this era, and some of it will be genuinely helpful. But the deeper issue is how we relate with that. How do we use those tools of an age without slowly handing over the faculties that make us inwardly alive? These are some of my questions. And we can carry those sorts of questions over into the spiritual dimension too. I can see Uranus in Gemini coincided with a renewed hunger for esoteric practice, symbolic systems such as astrology, divination, mystery traditions, and spiritual experiment. And this is already happening, but I can see an explosion coming of it. But also, I can see it stimulating new inquiry into neurology, consciousness studies, cognition, or anomalous perceptions, and the edges of what we currently think of as mind. What's interesting to me, that it may become harder to hold science and spirituality apart in that old rigid way. I'm not saying that it's going to become the same thing, but because the field of inquiry widens, the split itself begins to feel less stable. People might want to know more than one thing at once. There is a call for the science and the spirituality, or what we call spirituality, or the science of consciousness. People might want careful research and live in symbol at the same time, or rigor, scientific rigor, and the mystery. The physicists have got a lot to say about mystery. And there may be people wanting a language that's spacious enough to include both mind and soul. Okay, that reconnection, making the two whole. And at the end of June, when Jupiter enters Leo, this atmosphere is going to change again. There's going to be a warmth brought here, and probably with Jupiter and Leo, a loudness, an amplification, expansion. So things are going to become more visible and expressive. Jupiter in Leo wants to speak from the center, okay, the heart, Leo heart, the lion. But he will also be wanting declaration and confidence, so wanting the voice to carry. That's the energetics. So that can be absolutely beautiful. It can bring a certain type of courage and creativity. It can help people step out of the borrowed language and narratives and speak more directly from the heart of their own experience. But again, we need to look at that shadow. It can amplify certainty and turn thought into a performance, or make a narrative, every single narrative, feel that it's entitled to a stage. So if Uranus in Gemini is already unsettling the mental field, Jupiter in Leo may give that unrest more heat and a stage and a theatre to perform in. And that's why, for me, grounding feels like it's essential through this period from now up until July. And not as a side note, but part of the work we're doing itself. I think grounding should be something we do daily. It's up to whoever's watching, but getting your feet in the soil, getting out in nature, grounding spiritually. And if we're living through this age of air and the chapter is carrying so much fire, then the earth has to be consciously chosen in that sense. Because we can go away with our minds and our passions and our heat and our plans and totally forget to ground. Okay, can be all up here and none, no feet on the ground. So what I'm saying is the body has to be remembered, and we need to cultivate silence, and our focus and attention, and where our attention is being placed, needs to be protected. So there has to be some place in us where thought can settle enough to reveal what actually has weight in our lives. Otherwise, the mind can become all spark and no hearth. Okay, so we can have all the messages and information, but a total lack of meaning. Just scroll through Instagram or TikTok for 15 minutes. For me, it's 5. And you see masses of messaging, information, and very little meaning. So now when I think about Uranus in Gemini, as opposed to the video I done in July, I still hear that phrase, the Great Mind Rebellion, but it's landing differently in for me than it did back then. It's feeling more like an initiation. Okay, the rebellion's real, but it's not a rebellion against outer structure. It's a quieter and deeper refusal to let the mind be wholly colonized by noise, speed, ideology, performance, or inherited narratives and scripts. For me, it's a long process, and it'll be 7 years. This goes 3 years. So that long process of becoming more conscious of what is shaping thought, and what we're allowing to speak through us, consciously or unconsciously. So for me, it's a training in how to stay inwardly awake while the collective field is going to grow louder and faster. Okay, so a question of whether we can hold both freedom in that atmosphere and depth, and whether we can continue to remain open to symbol, spirit, imagination, and the unknown that gives us such meaning, while also becoming more honest and discerning and grounded in the way we think. Critical thinking here. And perhaps looking at all of this is where the real inner authority is going to lie. So it's not about having the loudest voice and reacting fastest and saying my truth at every opportunity, or even choosing that side where there's division, choosing a side just to escape the uncertainty. But maybe it will be about learning how to inhabit our minds with more care, to speak from a place that has actually been lived in. It's not all up here, not all information we learned, but that place we live in, and it's been examined and it's been made conscious. And under this kind of sky, that might be one of the most radical things that we can do. That's what I have for you here. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to move on to the horoscopes now, and all the timestamps will be in the box below. And I'm going to start with Aries rising. Hello, Aries. So Uranus is moving through your 3rd house. So the mind itself is going to become the site of change. So Uranus may be bringing disruption and sudden change here for you in your mind. So it'll be about the way you think, speak, write, learn, and move through your immediate world. And that might become less fixed and routine and more electric. There can be a real liberation here, but also a tendency towards mental overload. So the work is to let new thought arise without letting your nervous system become a battlefield for you. Okay, Aries, that's what I have for you. It's a quick one. If you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe, and share. And I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. Hello, Taurus. So Gemini's in your second house. So Uranus here can unsettle and reinvent your relationship with money, value, skill, and your sense of self-worth. It might be asking you to think differently about what supports you and definitely about what your voice is worth. The deeper shift might be less about simple financial change and more about the value system underneath it. Okay, Taurus, very quick horoscope for you there. If you liked the video, please like, subscribe, drop a comment in the box below, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. Hello, Gemini. So Uranus is entering your sign. So that can feel like a long and unusual reintroduction to yourself. It's about your identity, and that becomes harder to hold in old narratives, old language. There may be more experimentation for you, more movement, and a stronger refusal to live inside inherited definitions. So the invitation is to let yourself evolve without fragmenting into any kind of performance. And that's what I have for you, Gemini. If you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe, drop a comment, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye. Hello, Cancer. So for you, Uranus is sat in your 12th house. So this is going to work more quietly at first for you, more than likely. So old thought forms, unconscious narratives and scripts, psychic residue and inner narrative may begin to stir below the surface before they fully show themselves in your outer life. So this can be a really powerful time for dream work, reflection, and noticing what has long operated behind the scenes. Okay, Cancer, really quick horoscope for you there. If you enjoyed the video, like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. Hello, Leo. So Gemini is falling in your 11th house. So Uranus transit in here can change your relationship with communities, friendships, networks, and your future vision or your hopes and dreams. The collective field around you might become more volatile or more stimulating or a mixture of both. So it matters who you gather with because your circles may now have a stronger influence on the climate of your mind. So that's what I have for you, Leo. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, drop a comment, like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. Hello, Virgo. So Uranus is moving through the 10th house, and that can reshape your vocation, reputation, your public role. And it can also affect the way your voice is heard outside in the world. There may be a call to speak differently, teach differently, or to be known for a more original line of thought. So what changes here may be asking you to sound more fully like yourself in public. That's what I have for you, Virgo. Very short horoscope. If you enjoyed the video, please drop a like, a comment, subscribe if you feel you want to, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. Hello, Libra. So Gemini is in your 9th house. So with Uranus transiting here, it can open a lot of reworking of your worldview, philosophy, spirituality, study, and that wider lens that you interpret life through. So old beliefs may become too small or too rigid for you. What matters here over the next 7 years is allowing your perspective to grow without turning the news story into a dogma. Okay, Libra, that's what I have for you. If you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe, comment, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye. Hello, Scorpio. Uranus is moving through your 8th house, and that's where mental and emotional inheritance can run deep. So, really important for you. So, this can stir old fears, hidden narratives, and the stories that live inside intimacy, trust, dependency, and any shared entanglements. So, it might be a period of speaking what you buried before and becoming more conscious of what you've been carrying in silence. Okay, Scorpio, that's what I've got for you. If you enjoyed it, please like, subscribe, drop a comment in the box below, and I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye. Hello, Sagittarius. So Gemini is in your 7th house. So relationship becomes one of the places where Uranus is going to be doing its work. So the old narrative, the old script of partnership might not hold any longer for you over these 7 years. So dialogue may become more alive and less predictable. So this will be asking you for honesty and flexibility, and to give yourself enough spaciousness that connection doesn't have to be built on repetition. Okay, Sagittarius, that's what I have for you. If you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe, and drop a comment in the box below if you feel you'd like to. And I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye. Hello, Capricorn. Gemini is in your 6th house, and the change may come through work patterns, routine, health habits, and the daily management of energy and attention. You've got Uranus here, so yeah. So the nervous system may tell the truth quickly to you if life is becoming too fragmented. So listen to your body. The invitation here is not only to update routines, but to create one that genuinely supports steadiness. Okay, Capricorn, very short horoscope. If you enjoyed the video, like, subscribe, drop a comment in the box below, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye. Hello, Aquarius. Gemini is in your 5th house, and Uranus here can awaken a more experimental current in creativity, play, romance, and definitely in your self-expression. So there may be more daring in how you speak from the heart or how you make your art, your creativity. The key is to let the mind play without losing touch with what's got depth and meaning for you. That's what I have for you, Aquarius. It's very short and sweet. And if you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe, and drop a comment if you have something to say. And I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye. Hello, Pisces. So Gemini is in your 4th house. So Uranus will be working here through home, roots, family narrative, memory, and that inner ground of your life. So it might bring outer changes in domestic life, but it can also be a more subtle breaking apart of inherited stories and narratives. So the question for you will become what kind of inner home the mind has been living in, and ask him whether that home is now ready to change. Short and sweet, Pisces, but that's what I have for you. And if you enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe, drop a comment in the box below, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.